Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All Guru Sri Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Rather, Pierre Mataji, whenever you're ready, you can start.
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All Guru Sri Prabhupada and Gurudev. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashtavrayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Today we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 14, the story of King Vena. Text 1. The great sage Maitreya continued, O great hero Vidura, the great sages headed by Bhrigu were always thinking of the welfare of the people in general. When they saw that in the absence of King Anka, there was no one to protect the interests of the people. They understood that without a ruler, the people would become independent and non regulated. Text 2. The great sages then called for the Queen Mother Sunita, and with her permission, they installed Vena on the throne as master of the world. All the ministers, however, disagreed with this. Text 3. It was already known that Vena was very severe and cruel. Therefore, as soon as all the thieves and rogues in the state heard of his absence to the royal throne, they became very much afraid of him. Indeed, they hide themselves here and there as rats hide themselves from snakes. Text 4. When the king ascended to the throne, he became all powerful with the 8 kinds of opulences. Consequently, he became too proud. By virtue of his false prestige, he considered himself to be greater than anyone. Thus, he began to insult great personalities. Text 5. When he became overly blind due to his opulences, King Vena mounted a chariot and, like an uncontrolled elephant, began to travel through the kingdom, causing the sky and earth to tremble wherever he went. Text 6. All the twice born Brahmanas were forbidden henceforth forward to perform any sacrifice, and they were always forbidden to give charity or offer clarified butter. Thus, King Vena sounded cattle drums throughout the countryside. In other words, he stopped all kinds of religious rituals. Text 7. Therefore, all the great sages assembled together, and after observing cruel Vena's atrocities, concluded that a great danger and catastrophe was approaching the people of the world. Thus, out of compassion, they began to talk amongst themselves, for they themselves were the performers of the sacrifices. Text 8. When the great sages concluded one another, they saw that the people were in a dangerous position from both directions. When a fire blazes on both ends of a block, the ants in the middle are in a very dangerous situation. Similarly, at that time, the people in general were in a dangerous position due to an irresponsible king on the side and thieves and rogues on the other. Text 9. Thinking to save the state from irregularity, the sages began to consider that it was due to a political crisis that they made Vena king, although he was not qualified. But alas, now the people were being distributed by the king himself. Under the such circumstances, how could the people be happy? Text 10. The sages began to think within themselves because he was born from the womb of Sunita. King Vena is by nature very mischievous. Supporting this mischievous king is exactly like maintaining a snake with milk. Now he has become a source of all difficulties. Text 11. We appointed this Vena king of the state in order to give protection to the citizens. But now he has become the enemy of the citizens. Despite all these discrepancies, we should at once try to pacify him. By doing so, we may not be touched by the sinful results caused by him. I can stop here, Prabhuji. Thank you so much, devotees. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Yeah, when you're ready, Chaitanya Prabhu, you can go ahead, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Radha Pyari Mataji, for reading the verses today. Thank you, Sundaram Prabhu, for giving me this opportunity to share something for my own purification and for pleasure of all assembled Vaishnavas from Srimad Bhagavatam. I'm going to start by offering my prayers. Om Kyantimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Paschat Deshatarane जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे मुखं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुदीनतारिणम्. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. We are reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 14, starting from text 1. So, just to give you a brief overview of what's been discussed so far, Harinam Prabhu had wonderfully described in the last session about King Anga. So in this canto, or in this particular past couple of chapters, we saw how Dhruva Maharaj, ascended back to the spiritual world, and then Maitri Muni was describing to Vidur all the different personalities and the kings that came in his lineage. And then finally, we started discussing about King Anga and how he performed a sacrifice to obtain a son. And through that sacrifice, he obtained a son called Vena, King Vena. And Vena, because of the influence of his maternal grandfather, who was described as death personified, was a very cruel personality. And as a result of it, in the last session, we had seen how Maharaj Anga, lamented to be associated with such a cruel son. And finally, out of disappointment, he leaves the kingdom. And now, because there is no particular king in the kingdom, all the miscreants in the society have taken an upper hand and are causing trouble. So, the story continues from here onwards. So this is the story of King Vena. In text 1, Maitri Muni goes on to describe to Vidur that all the sages who were present at that time, they decided that, because of the absence of a particular ruler, there's so much difficulty in society. So what they decided to do, they decided to approach Mother Suniti and establish King Vena as the king, because there should be some sort of a ruler in order to govern the society and protect the society from miscreants. The purport to this particular shloka is very wonderfully written by Prabhupada, and this is what I would recommend everybody to read for today's discussion if we have time. In this particular purport, Srila Prabhupada has touched on 3 points that I'd like to emphasize. The first point, and these 3 common themes, usually people of a very liberal mindset find it difficult to accept and understand from our Vedic culture. The first theme Prabhupada's talked about is preaching. The second theme Prabhupada discusses briefly is the Varnashram system or the caste system. And the third theme Prabhupada talks about is governance. And these three themes continue in the next few shlokas as well. So we'll talk about them a little. Prabhupada goes on to describe the second line of the shloka. The term is used, Shema Darshana. Shema Darshana means those individuals who are always looking for the welfare of the people in general. So with regards to preaching, we understand that our movement is essentially a preaching movement. Oftentimes I've been asked this question a lot by sometimes families and friends and other people is, if we want to follow spiritual life and if we are interested in pursuing a higher goal in life, that's okay. But why do we need to go out and do Sankirtan? Why do we need to go out and do book distribution? We can keep our practice to ourselves. And the simple answer to that is when we come when we actually become a part of our sampradaya and we understand the compassion of the devotees, we understand the degree of suffering of people around us, we cannot help but reach out to them. For example, we just went through a pandemic, and if in a pandemic, if you had a particular cure, for the COVID or the vaccine or something that you truly believe is going to help people, and you see everybody around you is dying and miserable, you would naturally want to step out and spread the word so that as many people can benefit from it should benefit. So in that particular mood, our acharyas teach us that we understand that people in this world in general are suffering. By taking a human birth is a very rare event in a person's karmic life journey. And when he's in that rare event, if he misuses that event of this human birth and is not able to come to the conclusion that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and surrendering to Him is our one and only business in this material world, then we are going to be in grave danger. One common theme a devotee had shared with me in all of Prabhupada's purports. Whenever we read any purport, Prabhupada usually writes a common theme Prabhupada expresses in his purports is a sense of emergency. When anytime Prabhupada tries to emphasize the point that it is very, very important that we do not put this off, trying to advance in Krishna consciousness, trying to engage ourselves in Krishna's service, and we deal with it as an emergency and try to perfect our life. So in that understanding, in that mood, devotees step out of their comfort zone, step out of their homes, and they participate in the preaching movement. There are two kinds of devotees that are generally described. One is a Bhajananandi, and second is a Goshtanandi. The Bhajananda devotees are also very elevated, pure souls, and who are very deeply engaged in the service of the deity in a particular dham, and they prefer to remain in that dham in order to continue their service. But the Goshtanandi, they have a lot of compassion for people around in the society, and that is why they take the discomfort, the risk of stepping out of the dham and reaching out to people. One of the Srila Prabhupada's Guru Maharaj, His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was practicing Krishna consciousness in Navadvip Dham, in Mayapur, for a few years. But after that, he decided that he cannot bear the misery of people around him of this material world, and for their benefit, he decided to move to Calcutta to establish the Gaudiya Math, so that people can have a way by which they can understand spiritual knowledge in advance. Because he wanted to find a place that was so degraded and fallen that he could make the maximum benefit to the people there. And then our Guru, and then in our Sampradaya, our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada, for him, Calcutta was not fallen enough. I heard this recently in a lecture. He decided to come to New York, which was the capital of Maya Devi. And it took so many inconveniences for us, just so that the message of Krishna consciousness could be spread to the world and the suffering of this world can be alleviated. Oftentimes we think, everything's fine in America, people are nice, they're well-to-do, they don't have, basic struggles in life. But you have to understand that that is not the real problem. The real problem in life is not understanding who we are and who Krishna is. While preparing, we recently had God Purnima. So while preparing a consciousness for that, I was listening to some lectures. In that lectures, I was reading. I heard from the lectures that how at the time of appearance of Mahaprabhu, Navadip Dham was a very prosperous land. There were people who were materially very affluent. They had a very high degree of knowledge. They were very well to do materially. There was business was flourishing. But in that particular scenario, they had forgotten who God is and what their main purpose of life is. And seeing this, normally people would think, oh, but they are materially well to do. So what is the problem? But seeing that they have lost their consciousness, their true consciousness, Advaita Acharya, he felt great degree of compassion for them. And we know how he prayed to the Shaligram Shila and to the Lord to appear as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in this similar fashion, devotees take lots and lots of trouble to step out and preach. So similarly, in this particular example, the rishis, the saints headed by Bhrigu, when they saw that the society is going to be in great trouble because now there is no king. Maharaj Anga has left the kingdom, and there is nobody appointed as king, and all the miscreants are taking over. They were worried that what's going to happen to society in general if the thieves and rogues take over. Who's going to guide the society? Who's going to bring them back on the path of spirituality and Krishna consciousness? So, not for their own sake, but for the sake of the people in general, the rishis, they approached Mother Suniti, and even despite understanding the deficiencies in King Vena's character, they elected to decided to appoint him as the king. The second point that Prabhupada describes in the purport he briefly touches on is the caste system or the Varnashram system. Because one may question, why did not the Rishi Munis, why did they not just take over and become kings? What was the need to establish King Vena, understanding that he had all these deficiencies as the ruler? And then Prabhupada briefly describes that in the 4th chapter in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna states, Chatur Varnam Maya Srishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasha. That Lord Krishna says that I am the creator. Maya system, this is my creation, the Chaturvarna and the ashram system, Varnashram system is my creation, which is based on guna and karma, vibhagasha. And this system is made so that society can function in a wonderful, beautifully coordinated fashion so that the aim of human life can be achieved by people from different background and different psychosocial personalities. Now, this system also, this is the second point that I'd like to elaborate after preaching, that a lot of liberal people have a problem against. When people hear this system, they immediately jump to the caste system that's in India, wherein people are discriminated based on their birth, and people are also abused and subjected to a lot of oppression because of these differences. But we understand that to be the Asuric Varnashram system. What Lord Krishna talks about is the Devi Varnashram system, where people of different mentalities still come together to achieve a higher goal. Now, sometimes people may ask, what you're talking about is just very high level philosophy. Where is the practical application of this? Wherever we see this, the caste system or the division in society has only created problems. But to them, my answer would be, if you see our societies in ISKCON, if you see our communities that we've built, Prabhupada has built, in our temples, we can see a wonderful example how people of different inclinations come together and can serve. For example, in our temple community, if we see in terms of the 4 Varnas, there are people who are very qualified and function as Brahma, as Brahmins, and as Brahmins, they are able to perform wonderful deity worship. They are wonderful preachers, and they share the knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita so excellently and make it simple for the other people to understand about Krishna. Then there are people who are like Kshatriyas, who are like, the leaders in the temple system, who we all know that if there's any problem, anything that's bothering us in terms of law and order, or any major festival that needs to be organized, that we can easily approach them, and they're very excellent in executing that service. And the third division is of the finance part. And we know people, like for example, the Rath Yatra is coming. There's people who are expert in gathering funds, managing funds, and how to execute such a wonderful festival based on that. And the fourth one is just doing jobs that nobody else can do, like a job of a handyman, job of gardening, and they all perform those wonderful tasks. But despite having all these differences, when it's time for Aarti, when it's time for a big festival, when it's time to honor Prasad, we all sit down together, we all hold hands together and dance and sing in Kirtan and hug each other. So even though we all have different psychosocial personalities, we use them, understanding our differences, in the service of Krishna and in order to help each other advance in Krishna consciousness. That is one of the perfect examples of Devi Varnashram system when people can question us. The third point that Srila Prabhupada elaborates, and Bhurijan Prabhu in his book Unto the Lotus Feet had also discussed, is why did the Rishi Munis, why did they not take on the role of themselves and made King Vena the king? Is because they did not want to, they did not have the inclination, the mode of passion that they want to engage in, but they knew that as a king, they had the ability to do that. That's why they appointed him. Coming to the third point again, the third point about governance. Prabhupada briefly touches on this on the purport that in modern society, Shudras are the leaders. So we see that how most liberals believe that the best system of governance in today's world is democracy. And we see that in India currently, the largest democracy, we're having the general elections campaigning going on. But we understand from our Shastras that democracy is not the best system. Each system has its flaws, but the democracy seems to have more flaws than other. Prabhupada used to describe democracy as demon crazy. Demon crazy. Because in general, people, when they have to elect somebody, they do not have the right knowledge or the right capacity to understand who they should be electing. So a lot of miscreants, people are not the right mindset, they take advantage of that, and as a result, they cheat the common public. And that is what we see how the politicians of today are. They're like Shudras. They have no knowledge. Prabhupada writes in the purport, such persons whimsically enact laws without knowledge of life's purpose. So they do not know what the ultimate goal of life is, and they whimsically enact laws, and as a result of it, society cannot progress towards a higher spiritual realization. And also in a multi-party democracy, there are so many different allies and such an unstable system that society in general cannot progress forward. Whenever we make this argument about democracy and having a king, the liberals usually would come back and say, so what about dictatorships? Are you saying dictatorship is okay? Like having a monist king is okay? And what about Hitler? But we understand the system of governance as described in the Shastras and described in this particular chapter, that even though there was a king, and the king was a very highly qualified king appointed by rishis, he was still subjected to the influence, and he still had great respect for the saints in the society. And the saints in the society, in this particular case headed by Bhrigu, would give good advice and general counsel to the king, and he would respectfully listen to the advice and execute the laws so that people in general could advance in spirituality, Krishna consciousness. And there are many such examples that we come across in the Shastras. Example of Maharaj Dashrath, how he took advice from Vasishtha Muni and Valmiki Rishi in order to do the needful. So in that particular way, we understand that these three themes of preaching, the caste system, and the governance system of governance, how we understand that from our Shastras. So based on those principles, the Rishi Munis, headed by Bhrigu, they next, after speaking to Mother Sunita, they appointed King Vena as the king, even though understanding his deficiencies. But one good thing that happened, Prabhupada describes this, when he became king, all the miscreants, they became afraid and they started hiding away in society because of his influence and cruelty. In text 4, Prabhupada described in the purport that when the king is ascends to the throne, he becomes all powerful. And normally, the kings, when we read in our scriptures, they were trained from a very young age to have all the, the qualities in the mode of goodness, and have great training in the yogic siddhis, the yogic powers, 8 kinds of opulences, and they were called Raj Rishis, because they were very highly spiritually qualified. But however, King Vena, he lacked these qualities, and he consequently of achieving by getting the power of the king, he became too proud, and by virtue of his false prestige, he considered himself to be greater than anyone, and then he began insulting personalities. With this, I remember once I shared in one of the seminars by a devotee that once there was this famous boxer, we know him as Muhammad Ali, before he was Cassius Clay. He had proclaimed very famously before an important fight that I am the greatest, and that nobody can beat me. I'm such an amazing boxer. I'm the greatest. Fast forward down, 15, 20 years later, when there was an Olympic ceremony and he was asked to light the torch. At that time, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, a disease where your hands uncontrollably shake. So while trying to light the torch, he had difficulty, and his hand was uncontrollably shaking. And after that, when there was a conference and somebody asked him this question, that Muhammad Ali, you said you're the greatest, but what happened now? And then he says, and then he replied and said, I still say I'm the greatest, but now I realize I'm the greatest fool. Think that I could be all powerful, no, whatever. And that is what great personalities who have pride, they ultimately end up realizing. In text 5 is described how King Vena, being blind to his opulences, in the shloka, the word is described mad andha, blind because of pride and opulences. He roams around the kingdom in his chariot and causes havoc everywhere he goes. And as a result of this, of his previous negative sort of inclinations, he's forbade sacrifice and all the charity and everything that is supposed to be offered by the people in general to advance in spirituality. Prabhupada describes in the purport that some countries also openly decry religion and tend to shape the religious conversation in such a way that it is less God-oriented and more oriented to social reforms. One of the major popular countries in the world is very well known to do that. And as time goes on in Kali Yuga, Prabhupada describes in the purport that this will happen more and more often. And people who would want to practice religion, they would have to do this in fear. So another hint he gives is that we should use this one birth we have as an emergency and quickly try to achieve perfection in this one lifetime itself. In text 7, it's described that all the great sages assembled together, and they now are they're discussing amongst themselves how can they help the society in general, because they're feeling a lot of compassion. They're seeing that as the sacrifices and charity and rituals are being stopped by King Vena, people are in general are going to suffer a lot among themselves. Usually, the sages, saintly people are in the mode of goodness. Sometimes people ask me, what is the difference? What are these different modes? Mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. One simple answer I give to people is, mode of people in the mode of ignorance, they do neither any good for themselves nor any good for anybody else. So usually when you're taking intoxication, when you're drinking alcohol, and you develop disease because of it. So it's neither good for you, and after drinking, you create havoc in society, and it's neither good for somebody else. So that's the mode of ignorance. In mode of passion, people have the mentality of doing good only for themselves. So they try to do good for the short term, only for themselves, not thinking about other people. So they're very passionate in their job, they're very passionate about something, but they don't realize that in the process they may be hurting society, they may be hurting the environment. So that's only the thing only about what's good for them. But people in the mode of goodness, they do things, they live a healthy lifestyle because it's good for them. But at the same time, they do a lot of charitable work and things that are good for everybody else. But we realize that as devotees, we transcend all these three modes and try to reach the Shuddha Sattva state that go beyond the modes of nature. But that's one of the simple answers I think of. In text 8, the Rishi Munis, when they're discussing the situation of the people, they describe it's like a fire blazing on both ends of a log and the ants in the middle. Another common phrase in English parlance that's used is you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. That both sides, the people in general are in trouble because of the notorious king on one side and the miscreants and thieves on the other side. So seeing that that this is a political crisis, that there's a grave situation, they realize that they're going to approach King Vena and try to counsel him, offer him good counsel, so they could take corrective measures and bring back normalcy to society. In this purport, Prabhupada describes that there are three things that we should normally practice. A brahmachari should always practice sacrifice. A grihastha should always practice charity. And people in the renounced order, with vanaprastha and sannyas, should practice penance. In text 10, it's described that even though he may be a king and he's born from the womb of Sunita, but he's supporting him would be exactly like maintaining a snake with milk. So if a person is of an envious nature, we should not continue encouraging him, because even if we do that, even if we give milk to the snake, it's only going to emit poison. In the last shloka for the discussion today, finally, the saints also come on along with what's going to happen to the people. They also understand the Vedic knowledge, and they realize because we are the ones who appointed him as the king, all the things that he's doing, the negative karma he's accumulating, we may also be suffering because of that. So in order to not be touched by the sinful results, we have to take immediate action and speak to King Vena. And if he does not listen, then we would have to take corrective measures. And with that, I'll end our discussion today. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.